My instinctive response to the video was very strong. I think thinking about what was the purpose of this, what was it designed to do, and what led to the decisions to do it in this way, felt so intimate. But at the same time, when you actually think about it, it still completely preserved her privacy.
Can we talk a bit about William?
The beard.
The beard.
I have to say, when I saw him in the video over the summer, I wasn't completely convinced. But now I've seen him out and about, I think it's quite a good look.
Oh my God, I'm so, it's great. Hi everyone, and welcome to a new episode of a Right Royal podcast with me, Andrea.
And me, Emmy. And Emily.
Oh, you're actually in the same room.
Yes, we're all here.
And no more holidays. They are banned.
Until next month, right?
Yeah, well, we're back to work though.
The same can be said for the Royals.
And Kate.
So we have plenty to catch up on.
Yes, let's crack on. We have a busy show ahead discussing a certain unprecedented video by the Princess of Wales, a milestone birthday, an upcoming royal tour.
Well, I think we need to complete the golden trio here and welcome Royal Editor Emily Nash to fill us in on some of the latest news.
Today we're also joined by one of her cheese and wine besties.
Oh yeah.
Royal author and broadcaster Victoria Murphy.
What is this mystery cheese and wine that you speak of?
We know what happens without us, Emily.
The listeners know.
You know I don't touch wine.
Okay, now I definitely know that happening without us.
Right, let's get started. What a week for the royal books,
When is it not, quite frankly?
I feel like we always start every podcast with what a week, especially this year.
Yes. There's so much to unpack, but I think we should start with a certain visit to the palace that you had last week.
Yes, I was at Buckingham Palace last week to hear a bit more about the King and Queen's visit to Australia and Samoa. Samoa. I think that's how you pronounce it. Yeah, everyone in the UK normally says Samoa.
Yeah,
no,
I think I said Samoa.
Playing rugby, etc. Yeah, Samoa is the correct pronunciation. I stand, however, to be corrected if you're listening in Samoa or thereabout.
You thought you were listening to Royal News. Actually, it's a geography podcast.
We like to have a broad brush approach to our coverage. But yes, we heard a lot more about this visit. It's sort of 8-9 days in total, and it's going to be quite busy, all things considered.
What's so significant about this visit?
Well, it's the first visit the king will have made to one of his overseas realms since becoming king. So that's very big for him. It's also the first visit to Australia by a reigning monarch since 2011. That's when the late Queen last visited. And of course, he's going then to Samoa for the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. And that'll be the first one he attends as head of the Commonwealth and as monarch. So it's a really big milestone for him.
So what does this say about his health? Surely good news.
Yeah, it's a really good sign. You know, when I've spoken to the palace about this, there's no confirmation at the moment as to whether he's still going to be undergoing treatment. He's been having weekly cancer treatment since his diagnosis. And they're not saying, whether that's going to be put on pause or whether, in fact, it will be completed. But just the fact that he's taking on such a mammoth journey at his age, with everything that else has been going on, I think it's a really positive sign. And, we know how determined he is to carry on. This is also his way of showing people with cancer that you can, to an extent, if you feel able to, try and just carry on with your life.
It's a big trip for Camilla as well, isn't it? Because she doesn't like flying.
She doesn't like flying. I'm sure she probably dreads the really long haul ones like this.
Yeah.
And I wonder if she'll stop off somewhere en route. We know she's done that in the past. She stopped in India, where she has a retreat she loves to go and visit, to sort of decompress for a little bit. But if you think about the pressure they're under, the number of people they have to meet, all these formal events, it's a lot for anyone to take on. I mean, it's a lot for the journalists covering it, but they have factored in some downtime. There's a down day soon after they arrive, and there aren't loads of evening engagements. So it's all being addressed to make things as comfortable for them as possible.
If we know something, if we've learned something actually from the past podcast, is that they have a good team going with them. I mean, we know, and we've been told, they travel with doctors, with a blood bags. So he'll be in the best hands.
Always, yeah. And, he's going to be very, very well looked after. But it's a big moment, and I think he's really looking forward to it.
Now, this isn't the first royal tour that the family are doing in the autumn.
No, it's not the first overseas visit. Obviously, there have been a couple. And we should also mention, obviously, the King did manage to get out to Normandy for D-Day.
Of course.
Which was a big moment. But this is the biggest thing he'll have done since his illness. But we have the Princess Royal in the Netherlands over this weekend commemorating the Battle of Arnhem. It's the 80th anniversary of that. And this week also the Duchess of Edinburgh is in Tanzania with her doing her work around sight and vision loss. So she's representing the UK while she's there as well.
That's Sophie, isn't it?
We should also mention these things because we just tend to take the sort of big headline tours.
Sure.
But there's a lot of travelling going on.
I've got to say, I'm just so happy to hear about like Anne being back doing
what she does best.
Doing what she does best.
Yes.
And like Charles and so it just feels like, yes, normality, things how they should be.
Fingers crossed, fingers crossed.
So, yeah. I mean, it's been an incredible year, hasn't it?
Now, TV-wise, Emmy...
No, you can't ask me.
Why not?
Because, and I know what you're about to say, you're about to ask about the new Prime Video show, A Very Royal Scandal. I haven't watched it yet.
Oh.
I know. I mean, I'm not sure if we've mentioned, but I've been on holiday.
I'm very busy time.
Yeah.
What about you, Em? Have you watched it?
Yeah, I was going to say, if anyone's had screeners, it's this guy.
Helpfully, I've watched it so you don't have to.
Very good. Oh no, this is my only role as the TV girl and the podcast.
You failed us.
I've let the side down.
Well, look, maybe we'll talk about it more in another episode.
Yeah.
But I have watched it. It's airing this week now. Considering I feel like I know the story pretty well, I found it really compelling.
Really?
And it's different to Scoop. You'll remember the Netflix series that went out earlier in the year, and we interviewed Sam McAllister, the producer from Newsnight, about it for the podcast. A Very Royal Scandal on Prime Video is seen from Emily Maitlis's perspective. Now, this is the veteran former BBC presenter and journalist who carried out this incredible interview with Prince Andrew. And it's a different perspective, but it also tells you a lot more about the fallout from the interview, how it impacted her, how it impacted Prince Andrew. And there's a lot of imagined scenes between him and his daughters, Beatrice and Eugenie, appear in it. Interestingly, Princess Beatrice is played by Honor Swinton-Byrne, who is the daughter of Tilda Swinton. I think that's her first major role.
Wow.
She's very good. And it really is just a different perspective on a story that I think most of us are fairly familiar with. I wasn't expecting to enjoy it as much as I did.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think my perspective is like, we've already watched an adaptation really recently. Why would we want to watch another? But I guess Scoop was a movie as well, and this is a mini-series, so that you can pack a lot more in.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it sounds like they have kind of gone more personal with the show.
Yeah, I think it's probably a little bit more nuanced. They are, you see Michael Sheen, who is fabulous as always, playing...
Who's better, Michael Sheen or Rufus Sewell? Because Rufus Sewell was like a real transformation, wasn't
he? Was brilliant. He was brilliant.
But Michael Sheen's such a chameleon.
He's so good at inhabiting the character in this. And the way he portrays Prince Andrew is very unflattering.
Oh.
There's a lot of swearing. There's a lot of sort of rudeness. Curt behaviour.
You won't find this in this podcast.
But only
whilst the cameras are rolling anyway.
But we do also sort of see him grappling with the aftermath of the interview and the sort of realisation that his public life is over.
Right.
And I thought that was quite an interesting way of looking at it. And then the other thing that I found really interesting is that Emily Maitlis, who is played by the brilliant Ruth Wilson, also explains a bit about her feelings afterwards and this feeling responsible for, what happened to an extent. But in terms of Beatrice and Eugenie, she reveals through the show that she bumped into them while out running one day and they looked at her with real sadness. And you can see that, certainly in this drama anyway, she's sort of grappling a bit with her conscience over that.
But all this is imagined.
Well,
this is some of it's imagined. Obviously, some of it's being informed by Emily Maitlis.
Yeah.
She's one of the exec producers.
That's what I was going to say, yeah.
Which is really interesting. But they also take us inside a meeting between Prince Andrew and Jeffrey Epstein. And then at the end, the thing that I think is very interesting is that they finish on footage of Virginia Roberts Giuffre, who has been Prince Andrew's accuser. It's very important to say at this point that he's always vehemently denied all the allegations made against him. But I think it is important, that we're looking at these renderings, if you like, on the big and the small screen as entertainment. But it's really important to remember the victims in this, the people who were the victims of Jeffrey Epstein. So I think that's quite an elegant way of concluding it.
And is there a lot in it about Charles's relationship with his brother Andrew?
There's a real suggestion of the tensions between them, and the sense that, the then Prince of Wales, Prince Charles, was sort of calling the shots to an extent, along with the late Queen. And there's a lot about the inner workings of the palace. Whether or not it's entirely accurate, I'm not sure. But interestingly, for fans of The Crown, Alex Jennings, who played the Duke of Windsor, is playing Sir Edward Young, the late Queen's private secretary. So it's quite funny to see him in that sort of palace setting again, but in a very different role this time.
Oh, that's interesting. Just mixing things up.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good watch. It's probably the last thing the royal family needs again at the moment, because as we know, people do tend to take some of these things as gospel. But in this case, we all watched that interview at the time. Unfortunately, you can't really undo what was said.
Do you think this will have an impact on the royal family, the release of this show, or...?
They've navigated worse waters, I think.
Oh, wow.
Well, what I've been told is, and I think this is right, there's nothing new in it. There's nothing that we're not already aware of. And I don't think that it will particularly trouble them. But, it's never pleasant to have these things raked over.
But you sold it. You sold it to me.
Sounds like a good watch.
Oh, I'm definitely going to watch it.
Just, call me your official taster.
Now, we've got so many more subjects to talk about, but I think we should welcome your cheese and wine bestie.
Let's bring her in. No wine and cheese today. I'm so sorry, girl.
Oh, a shame. We've got a little table perfect for it.
Let's do it. Victoria, thank you so much for joining us. We're really excited to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Full glory on camera.
I know, very different to last.
I know the girls have some questions for you before we get started.
Yeah, namely, what kind of red wine do you take to Emily's house?
Oh, okay.
And do you have a favourite cheese? Or
Oh my goodness, that is a really hard question. Do I have a favourite cheese?
What's your favourite cheese?
Oh my goodness. Honestly, really, I would say Comté is my favourite cheese. If
There
I
you
had
go,
to,
Emily.
but that is very difficult.
Add it to your shopping list.
If we ever actually have a cheese and wine event, I will be sure to pick up some Comté.
And I will be sure to eat it.
We need to schedule this. Now, thank you for coming this week. It's been really busy. We're going to kick off with a certain person's 40th birthday. What did you make of that? The way that it has been disseminated. What did Harry do?
Can I clarify, if you're living under a rock, we are talking about Prince Harry.
Prince Harry.
Yeah. Because you would kind of have to be living under a rock, I think, because I was actually surprised, I think, at how much of a build-up there was to his birthday and how many stories there were about it in advance, how much it seemed that people were focusing on that milestone. And I think I had thought, because he's no longer a working royal, that we wouldn't have that kind of Harry at 40 moment in the same way that we would have done if he hadn't stepped back. But it felt very similar. I thought the fact that he chose to put out some words about the milestone as well kind of escalated that coverage.
It was quite unusual, wasn't it, really, I think?
Yeah, I guess maybe that just reflects for him the fact that this is a milestone, and he's been very much feeling that and wanted to reflect, and maybe reflect publicly as well in some ways.
Can I just say, he wanted to be a more private person. I feel like he wasn't letting us forget that it was his birthday, because I think if he hadn't released that statement to the BBC, maybe there wouldn't have been so much around his actual milestone birthday.
There was always going to be press around his birthday.
Well, there's certain stories like, well, I do want to know about the inheritance, if it's true or not. But otherwise, I feel it was kind of more him wanting...
I agree there might not have been so much. But I always, when people talk about him wanting more privacy, I always come back to this point that I do sort of like to make, which is that I don't think that they really wanted total privacy. What they wanted was a different kind of public life. They wanted a public life where they could have more control. And so he does want to be seen and be heard, and just more on his own terms than he was before. And for me, this is another reflection of that. You know, he wants to be able to communicate what he wants about this milestone and not have a lack of control over other aspects of his life. So I think it's very in line, to be honest, with how I would have expected him to do things now. I thought the fact that it wasn't a statement that was released and put out there, but it was sort of this thing that appeared in the BBC, and then People magazine as well had some quotes. And when people went to his press team and said, you know, is there a statement? We were told, no, there isn't a statement. This is just a response to questions that were asked. So it was kind of putting information out there, but a step back from actively putting out a statement about his birthday.
Okay, got it. So BBC reached out and they got an answer.
That's what it seems has happened, yes. But I think they clearly didn't want to then widely distribute these comments, so that every time anyone else used them, they then had to attribute it to the BBC, as opposed to saying, this has come directly to us from his spokesperson. So it had a different feel.
Yes, it was slightly distance, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how is the birthday boy celebrating the big 4-0?
I mean, I wish I had all the inside scoop, but, you know, very much privately with friends, it seems, is what we're told.
We were told, as per our cover story, that he was going to celebrate in Montecito with Meghan, the children, and some close friends, but also that he was planning this trip to the mountains with some male friends. That didn't happen over the birthday weekend, as far as we can tell, because he attended the George Zyphon tennis tournament in Los Angeles with Meghan. The couple also went to Tyler Perry's 55th birthday celebrations, which was very starry. So, I mean, maybe he's up a mountain as we speak. Who knows?
Yeah. So he spent his birthday celebrating other people, it seems, which I guess is quite in keeping with, I think, how he would like to be seen as well. So
this is true. I mean, I think, you know, he's perhaps not as bad at acknowledging birthdays as a certain person in this room who recorded an entire episode of the podcast and left without telling anyone it was her birthday recently.
Oh, yeah. That was you.
I was like, what? Sorry, what?
We felt very guilty, didn't we, Emily?
We did feel quite bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because from some of the people I've spoken to who are close to him, you know, they didn't feel like this was going to be a big turning point. I think sometimes that we, as a society, view 40 as this major moment. I mean, I guess it is a milestone in someone's life, but I don't think there's any particular plan to completely change the way he's doing things.
He's reached an age that his mother didn't reach.
Yeah.
That's a depressing thought.
Well, I know, sorry, but I mean, it is true. He says in his statement that, well, in his quote to the BBC, that he was anxious about 30. I'm assuming because he was maybe still single and hadn't met the one.
Well, and, you know, we know that he was dealing with, you know,
PTSD,
unresolved trauma and things like that.
And then he's excited about 40.
Yeah, good for him.
Yeah.
I mean, happy birthday. It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because this was different in the way that the rest of the royal family approached his birthday.
Yeah, that's correct. So for the first time in 3 years, the official social media accounts of the royal family posted to wish him a happy birthday. And it seems like such a sort of small thing to have created such a huge amount of noise. But actually, it doesn't surprise me at all, because people do read into what they post on these accounts. It does matter. It is a way of them expressing themselves. It's a way of them saying something both directly and indirectly. And there was always, I think, going to be huge interest in whether or not they acknowledged this birthday. Now, there's different ways to look at this, because it's a milestone birthday. So that does mark it out from the 2 birthdays that they didn't post. So you could say, well, this is very much in line with he's no longer a working royal and they're posting for a milestone birthday. Or you could look at it that it is a sign that relations are thawing. That some of the sting has gone out of the animosity of the last few years. And I think that can be true.
Yeah.
What I would say is, I think there's still a lot of hostility there between Harry and other members of the royal family, particularly between him and his brother. But I do think that time has been a bit of a healer in comparison with where we were a couple of years ago. So I think there is truth to that argument that maybe things have moved forward in a more positive direction in some small way. But then I also think that even if things haven't, and if they hadn't moved on, would still have been the right thing from a PR perspective, from a keeping up appearances perspective for the palace to post.
I think the optics of not
birthday.
posting this time round would have worked against
such
them.
a milestone birthday.
Yeah. And that would have been what everyone would have been talking about. They would have been talking about disagreements, disconnect. And that's, of course, not what they wanted.
It takes the sting out of it, doesn't it?
But I know none of us were in the room where it happened, to quote Hamilton. But how high up do you think approval was to do that post? Do you think Prince William gave it a thumbs up? Do you think King Charles gave it a thumbs up? Or was it just the royal social team?
I don't think that something like that would be done without consultation across the board.
Yeah.
It would seem to me, just because they would know the level of attention that would be on this, and that people would read into it as something to do with the individuals. And so the individuals concerned would need to, in my view, have...
I think it will have been okayed from the top. And also the fact that it was sort of joined up approach, I think helps, doesn't it? Because it doesn't look like one side is taking a different tack at that point.
Yeah, I mean, you could go, even more into the weeds and say, well, Kensington Palace referenced Buckingham Palace's post, they didn't do their own. But I think the tone and everything feels very much kind of in line with this idea that it's a positive thing. And I think that it's been described as an olive branch by some people, and I think that's a perfectly reasonable interpretation of it.
I was going to say, is this an indicator that Harry's going to be...
I mean, Oasis
friends again with everybody?
Oasis have reformed. I think anything could happen.
What, the William and Harry tour? I think we're way off that. But we do know that Harry is back in the UK later this month for the Well Child Awards, which is
amazing.
going to be covered by Hello. We are media partners. Always a fantastic event. So very much looking forward to being there and covering that. But inevitably, there's always going to be a lot of speculation about whether or not he's going to meet up with his father, with his brother.
Where he's going to stay.
So that's all to come.
No, it is. And I think people are interested in any information that can be gleaned about those interactions. And I think particularly with his father, it feels like there is potential there now for movement towards a much more positive reconciliation. And he came over here. We know that he's been in contact with his father. I think with William, it's a different situation.
Yeah.
I would be more surprised if there was any contact from that
and
side
William
of things.
has a lot going on at home.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, one thing to say about the Well Child thing, I think as well, is it's a really good example of Harry having left working royal life, but it's a patronage that has continued to work really well. And it's a partnership that I think possibly because it's structured around this major event, and he's able to come and be part of that event. Actually, the way in which he's involved with that charity doesn't appear to have really changed that much.
No.
Whereas, of course, we know that a lot of things did have to change when he left the royal fold.
Yeah, and it's, we've said it before on the show, he is very good at that kind of thing. And I think that can only help, perceptions of him in this country as well, where, which haven't been as favourable as they once were in recent years. But I think showing up and reminding people of that ability he has to, shine a light on causes like Well Child is worth doing.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel like it has lessened or really even changed that much in the level of spotlight and the type of spotlight that he shines on that organisation.
Now, I know you want to talk money because you always want to talk money.
Yeah, well, I've got two things to talk about. One of them is money. What's truthful about all these comments that that he has inherited lots of millions on his 40th.
Well, wouldn't we like to know?
We would. I have asked.
I think this is a really interesting because it's such a historical story, and all we have really is this historical information. So there were stories that were written after the Queen Mother's death in 2002 about her money and about her financial situation. And there was a story in The Guardian that pointed out, amongst other things, that she had set up a trust fund in 1994 and put money into it, and that William and Harry, along with her other great-grandchildren, would be beneficiaries of this trust fund. And in that story, they said that they would expected to share around £6 million when they turned 21, which is confusing in itself because they don't turn 21 at the same time. And then a further 8 million when they turned 40. And the impression was a share of this.
Yeah. And there's quite a few great-grandchildren.
Yes, exactly. And I think at the time the story was written, not all the great-grandchildren were born at that time. So I think it becomes confusing from that perspective as well. And this story was picked up by the BBC at the time, and it's been revisited.
Every year.
Recently. But the only solid information that exists is the information in that story. There's no independently available information about this trust fund. We wouldn't expect there to be, because it's private money belonging to the royals, not public money. To make things even more confusing, as the story has travelled through the internet, it's become he is getting 8 million, which was never even what the original story said. That was a share.
Well, others have said maybe 20 with all the interest and through the years. So it's like, how much?
This is exactly, and when I read the original story, it seemed that the 8 million was accounting for the interest. Yes.
Second question was, there has been an article by Hollywood Reporter, I don't know if you guys have read it, about Meghan.
I know what you're talking about.
I just thought it really surprised me. I don't, coming from an American publication, a heavyweight, calling her again Duchess Difficult, dictator in heels. Like, what was that all about?
Look, it's who knows where that has come from. Obviously,
and why?
Well, obviously, it's very unpleasant for Harry and Meghan, for the people working for them. But it's an interesting shot across the bows, I think, because we know very much about how Harry and Meghan struggled with coverage in the UK media. That's been very widely discussed. I feel that until now there hasn't been quite the same approach in America.
Yeah.
So I imagine that's challenging for them.
Maybe I think I noticed a while ago that I felt that there was more critical response from US outlets than we'd seen initially, because initially the criticism was mostly UK based, but that was more in a commentary vein than actually seeking to break stories, which this one does, and they clearly claim that they have multiple sources, is what they're saying. What I would say is, it's always going to be a more juicy story, isn't it, that people are not getting on than they are. And I think it's clear that there have been people who have worked for the Sussexes who have found it difficult. But I also know of people who have loved working for them as well. And is someone going to write a story about with those people's views, and is it going to get as much attention? So that there's that. So it's not surprising to me that it's attracted a lot of attention, but it maybe doesn't give the full picture. Yeah.
That seems very fair, Victoria.
Oh, well.
Very measured.
I think it is correct, though. So there definitely are people that I know who've worked for them who have... Don't take that view, So.
I know what you mean about it being surprising, because it does seem like it's like the first real sort of gotcha kind of thing about them in a while that I've seen personally.
And it also came completely out of the blue in the sense that it wasn't pegged to anything else. It didn't. This has happened, and now there's a follow-up story with this. It was just suddenly.
Why? Yeah.
They have sort of been flying under the radar, really, haven't they? They haven't done an awful lot.
No, it's been quiet. There's been a real period of quiet, but that's all about to change, because Harry is off to New York for the UN Assembly. That's going to be quite a big event where he's going to be active with quite a few of his charities and organisations. So I guess there's a moment where they're jumping into more activity on the horizon.
It's always going to be difficult for them to have the timetables that they had as working royals and to emulate that model of going out there day in, day out, just because I don't think the infrastructure that they have and the sense of purpose that they have is the same as it was when they were working royals.
Well, there's no pressure on them anymore. They don't have to achieve things to justify sort of being on the public
So they
payroll.
seem to be going for more these kind of targeted moments of lots of activity. Obviously, Colombia was an example of that. And now we've got Harry going to New York. And so I think we'll see less kind of steady, consistent day to day, but more big moments, a few big moments throughout the year from them.
I'm sorry if I'm going off piste here, though, but what has happened to some of their projects that they've announced. You know, like
You're obsessed with the jam.
podcast.
I know you're going to just bring up the jam again. Oh my
I was
God.
going to bring up the
Get
lemonade.
over it. She's not
the
sending
lemonade
you any.
deal,
The jam is
actually,
coming.
with
The
the
jam-
no, was it called Lemonade? The podcast deal.
That's
Lemons?
yes.
No, but that's been postponed for now, I think. No?
I think
But there was
the,
that, and then there was the jam.
the short
Where's the
answer
jam?
is that the short answer is, I think. Sorry to use an expression like this about jam. Things are bubbling under.
Yeah.
But
there has been stuff that they have started and then stopped. I think it's been quite a lot of trial and error with them in
find their
terms of
feet.
taking things up and finding out what works. I do feel that it's difficult for them to make it very clear to people what they stand for and what they're doing and what the core of their raison d'etre is, now that they've lost that from walking away from being part of the institution of the monarchy, where that's obviously very clear. And I think Invictus is an example where that really works and people really understand exactly what that is, what it stands for, and what Harry is doing when he's representing it. And I think some of their other projects don't work quite in the same way. And I think that's the challenge, isn't it? Is getting people getting in people's minds really clear what it is that they're doing. And I still think they haven't quite managed that over some things.
I think we're going to see a return to some of Harry's key causes. I think we'll see him going back to Centre Bali at some point. He's not visited there since 2018. In Southern Africa, we were on that trip. He went to Botswana and Lesotho. So I think that would be a great thing for him to do, to get back out there and remind people of this side of his work.
I think that's a very good point, because that charity still remains incredibly important to him.
Really
and
important.
I think that's a very good shout that at some stage soon he'll do something more publicly with them. I feel that for them really now, less is more, in the sense that if they focus on a few issues and focus on them very intensely, and that's going to be better for them.
I mean, you clearly missed the announcement of his Netflix series, Polo.
Yeah, what kind of TV editor are you, man?
Which actually dropped.
I write about quality television shows.
Because actually that dropped hours after the Princess of Wales video.
Maybe my Netflix algorithm knows me well enough to know that they're not targeting me with Polo.
Jam.
No. Hey.
So that dropped literally hours after the Princess of Wales's, what I call now, historic video.
which we need to discuss right
Which
now.
we need to discuss. So I think we move along and talk about this video.
Let's do it.
I can't believe you guys haven't discussed this.
We haven't discussed
in depth already.
I
I'm
know.
so pleased.
They're waiting
I'm
for me
so
to get
pleased.
back
We were
from
waiting,
holiday.
and
I've got
also
some
we were
things to
waiting for you,
say.
Victoria. We were waiting for you. Can I just ask both of you how you felt when you found out that this was happening?
You want me to go first?
Yeah.
Thank you. Because I feel like we probably felt the same. So
Yeah.
I'm going to get...
In all honesty,
Yeah. Well, slightly stressful because of the time
proximity
of
to
the
the school run.
briefing and all of that. But I think when I watched that video for the first time, it was stressful because it was not long before the embargo lifted and I was ready to write about it and talk about it. But it did make me catch my breath, in the sense that I was completely immersed in watching it, even despite all of that stuff that was going on. And normally when you watch these things and you're working, as you know, you do tend to be quite clinical about these things because you need to be thinking about your job that you need to do. But I felt very emotional.
Yeah.
I thought it was unbelievable, actually, how intimate it was. And I definitely felt, as I was watching it, the sense that this is something that's very different to what we've seen before. And for me, my instinctive reaction was, I just couldn't believe how open they were in terms of their relationship. The kids, not so much, because we've seen the kids in slightly similar scenarios before, but for William and Kate's relationship, to see them like that was totally unprecedented. And
Yeah.
that was the
Kiss
first
on the
thing I
neck.
was thinking.
I was like,
It was so
my jaw was
unexpected to sort of see them behaving like that, because we've talked about this loads before. They're not.
Kind of real fly on the wall kind of thing.
It was,
yeah.
and we'll get into that in a minute, because there's some debate over how natural it was. But we have covered them for years, and they don't show public displays of affection. They don't hold hands when they're out on engagements. They'll have the occasional touch each other's back or something like that, but they are very sort of professional in their
and they're very
dealings
fiercely
in public.
guarded about
They're
their private
so private.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my takeaway, was like, wow, this is a real opening up. And maybe Kate's experience has changed her. Maybe they just feel more comfortable at the moment in being open because they've started being open about this.
Yeah, because it had been a completely life-changing experience. And as she said, her perspective has totally shifted. And I think sort of maybe it does make you think a lot of things that you thought mattered maybe don't matter anymore. And this sort of why not let people in a little bit more and to see. And I think it was also about her reinforcing that point of how much her family had meant to her and how important I think William has been throughout this whole period, and the fact that he's been her rock. And I think there was a strong desire to show that. And that was part of the decision behind letting us see more of their intimacy, more of their relationship than we've ever done before. But I was completely, wow, I really, because I was thinking as we were in this briefing, and as I was thinking, okay, like I need to think, what am I going to say, about this? And watching that video, it was just so obvious to me, just the natural response that I felt so many people would have.
Yeah.
It was very easy to articulate what had come through strongly in watching it.
It was my dream come true.
Really?
I mean, I've been saying it for years. I've always wanted them to have more of a European royal approach because we follow, the Swedish royals and the Dutch royals and the Norwegian royals, and they're so much more open on social media. And it doesn't mean that they're still private people. It's just we get, we were talking about the Swedish royals at the end of the summer, and they released this beautiful video of images and clips from their summer and what they did. And I remember telling everyone, I just wish our royals would do the same. And then we got it.
You manifested
I
it.
manifested. You're welcome, guys. You're welcome.
Yeah, I think that was the thing. It was giving us an insight into their family life that we've never had before. But it was also a really smart way of getting a couple of messages across. One was that the chemo has ended, which is fantastic news. But the other thing which really stood out to me was this was kind of being very clear about the fact that she's not going to be back in the way that we've been used to, at least not anytime soon.
And actually, I think my instinctive response to the video was very strong. But then as time passed, when I started to think about it in maybe a more analytical way, I think thinking about what was the purpose of this, what was it designed to do, and what led to the decisions to do it in this way. And I think the thing that I've kind of reflected on is that it had such an appearance of intimacy. It was so intimate. It felt so intimate. And it felt like you were being let in so much. But at the same time, when you actually think about it, it still completely preserved her privacy.
Yeah.
Because actually what she was saying was kind of more around an idea of feelings and thoughts, but there was nothing specific in there that told us anything further really about her specific situation, because that's what she wants. She doesn't want to be specific about what kind of cancer she's had or anything to do with her treatment other than what they've told us about chemotherapy. A lot of the words were quite conceptual and trying to relate it to lots of people's experiences as well. And I think that creates empathy, but it also there's a slight distance there as well. And so it did fulfill that purpose of continuing in the vein of her having her privacy completely preserved, while at the same time creating this intimacy, which is actually very clever. It was a very, very cleverly
It was
done.
smart. I mean, one thing that I found incredible is that they take us inside Anne Hall. Where the family is sitting around a dining table playing cards. And that, you can't even imagine that happening a few years ago.
I think for me, seeing the Middletons was when I thought, oh gosh, this is different.
Yeah.
Because they're not working royals. They don't have any kind of public profile. I mean, the children aren't either, but they will be one day. Well, certainly George, Charlotte, we don't know for sure about Louis, but they're part of the public face of the royal family, whereas the Middletons are not at all. And that really shifted the tone for me into this is a personal thing. This is about their family.
But the Middletons have always been, with William and Kate in all of their milestone moments, like when she gave birth and she went to live with them for a while, and Michael took the photos. Like they've been at the Jubilees, they were at the few. Like they're always there.
Yeah, but they weren't in material that was officially released, or they wouldn't. So they weren't, like, we saw them going in to visit her in the hospital, but they didn't come and stand and pose in the pictures. So they were always kind of to this. And when they were photographed at events, there's always family members who were there. And I think it was about her as well, showing us her village, effectively showing us these are the people who have been here day in, day out as I've been going through this journey.
Yeah, it was an important acknowledgement of them as well. And, I'm sure they probably appreciate being kind of thanked in that way.
Overall, what do we think of the video? Because obviously I give it a 10. But a lot of people have, desperate. But a lot of people have been critic about it because, well, you tell us, Emmy, why?
Oh, no. I'm not critical about it. I think, to be honest with you, I don't even have a particularly sophisticated viewpoint on it. I love William and Kate. I think I've always liked how they showed us glimpses of their family life and like kept it sort of back a little bit. And I think it's like it's been a real, like, I think they've always balanced preserving their family's privacy and like living a public life very, very well. And this kind of felt, I don't know, like a little more media trained. And it's just like, I guess I was just sort of watching it kind of like what you guys were saying earlier about seeing the PDA between them and how lovely that was. And it is lovely seeing how tight their relationship is. But I think after, how long have they been together for?
A long time.
After many, many years of
2 decades.
Nothing more than, a nice like back pat whilst they're out doing an event. I don't know, I'm wondering what's going on when the camera says cut. Are they just like, oh, this is so cringy or what? And Kate's voiceover, I mean, where did she do that? Was she in a studio doing her voiceover with a script? Like, I just can't help but think how the sausage got made,
It definitely is slick and stylized in a way that they haven't done things before. Although the only thing I would say is that we have kind of seen a progression with their use of social media, and things have been going a bit more in that direction anyway.
Yeah.
Not quite as much as this. This was very different, but I think
like
you might be happy to hear I do think this was a one-off. I don't think this is the beginning of a new way of doing things on a daily basis. I think this was an exceptional piece of material for exceptional circumstances.
Absolutely. This is the thing,
and
it's like
felt that way.
It's so lovely hearing it. It's so like lovely seeing that she's doing better, and it's like, it is really nice to watch. I think just deep down, I'm a cynical.
But it's right to ask questions. But I think, and what you say, Vic, I think is absolutely the case. They aren't going to be, producing these mega films every 10 minutes. They did release a similar one by the same videographer, Will War, for their 10th wedding anniversary, which was an important moment to acknowledge. But one thing I do think we will see more of going forward is that more personal approach. And we are seeing it a lot more from them. William's been posting on social media this week, supporting Aston Villa. But we are getting more of those personal takes on things, which I think they realise is important for their relationship with the public.
I think this was also an acknowledgement as well of the appreciation for the space that she has been given, because aside from the intense speculation before she announced she had cancer, there has been a real kind of period of calm, and she hasn't been seen in public very much at all. And she has been given space from both the media and the public, and I think this was a appreciation for that, and something they know that people are really interested in her recovery, really invested in, that people really care. And I think this was a way of allowing people to see how a bit more than we've seen before as a sign of a recognition of that. And also I think it was also a sort of a plea for more space. Ultimately that's what it was as well. It was saying we've shown you now the situation, and I'm explaining that I need more space as well.
You're
moving forward. I'm
understanding.
not coming back to a full program of engagements, and things will be different to how they were before.
You know what, Vic, you've converted me.
Oh.
You sold me. It's very, it all makes a lot of sense.
But I think, and that's really important to reiterate, isn't it? Because we had William out a day after saying, it's going to be a long road. She said it herself, that this, now that the chemo's ended, doesn't just mean everything goes back to normal. And I think that this may impact the way she works, for the next couple of years.
I think so. And she's been very clear that her focus is staying cancer-free, is what she said. And also her focus is her family. And she's been very clear about that. She's said that, she does have this big public role, but her and William have always been very unapologetic, even before this, about the fact that they focus on their family and that is a huge priority for them. And the public is really behind them in that, I think. So I agree. I think it's going to be a long period of a shift.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we didn't know when she was going to return to work, but she actually already has.
Yeah, really?
Well, yeah. Her first official job has been recorded in the Court Circular.
Yeah, so basically the Court Circular records meetings or engagements of members of the royal family with sort of external organisations. So we're told that the Princess has been having meetings with members of her team who are based at Kensington Palace. But this week she's also met with people from the Early Years Centre, the Royal Foundation Centre for Early Years. So that is a step up, isn't it? I mean, we know she's been working from home, but this is a sort of a ramping up.
I think it's a more formal type of gathering. I think perhaps if she has been doing stuff previously behind the scenes, there's maybe been a reluctance to call that a formal meeting and to put it in the Court Circular. Potentially also because they know that if anything goes in the Court Circular, it's public, and then people will talk about it and say this is what she's been doing. And so this feels like a shift now towards saying this is a more formal working moment that she's having. I have to say, I'm kind of a bit surprised that she didn't do something like this before something like Wimbledon. I thought that she would start to come back in a more this vein, where the first things that she did would be internal meetings without media, and they would go in the Court Circular, and then we'd see internal meetings with media, and then we might see some external moments. So I was quite surprised that I wasn't surprised at Trooping because it's such a big royal moment, but that then she was in Wimbledon, and that's a long time in the public eye. I thought she would come back more in this vein, but I think that now we'll see that the building of these from time to time, things like the Court Circular. I think that there'll be some moments where there's an engagement where we just get a picture after it's happened, and then there'll be the kind of more public out and about, and there's people can photograph it, and she's going to it.
And we know those include Remembrance Sunday that she's hoping to attend with other members of the royal family, and also the wonderful Together at Christmas carol service, which has taken place at Westminster Abbey over the last few years, which is obviously really important to her. And I'm going to put my money on the fact that there may be some people from cancer charities attending this year.
Is that was sort of one of her last events before she sort of went from the public?
Yeah.
So it'd actually be sort of a nice circular moment for her to be back this year.
All being well.
All being well, yeah.
Can we talk a bit about William? We talked about the fact that he's, very touchy-feely in the video, which is lovely. What about the new look?
The beard.
The beard.
I have to say, when I saw him in the video over the summer, I wasn't completely convinced. But now I've seen him out and about, I think it's quite a good look.
Oh my God, I'm so it's great.
Move on to the next topic.
Talking about William, he was present when his son took some flying lessons.
Yes, indeed. Quite a novel moment for an 11-year-old.
I mean, that's just not your typical day.
Being he's following in the family footsteps, isn't he? He has flying on both sides of the family.
Yeah.
So I think it would be weird if he didn't. But look, who knows whether it was just a taster session or he's going to be doing it on a regular basis. But I think you have to be 16 or 17 to fly unaccompanied anyway.
So in the world of flying lessons.
He's not about to be,
Sounds sensible to me, definitely.
I know, I'm not sure I'd let my son, who's the same age, anyway.
I thought we could wrap it up talking about a very hot topic, James Middleton's new book.
Yeah.
There is a lot in that book.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because we're talking about William and Kate opening up a bit more, and we've had even more of an insight into their private life, although in a very measured way, from James Middleton.
They love tea in the morning.
Who doesn't? I mean, what kind of weirdo doesn't?
Yeah, I mean, it's the kind of book, isn't it, that a decade ago there would have been a huge fuss about, and now it just feels quite normal, I think, for him to be doing something like this. And the bits I've read, I think it seems like it's well written and pretty interesting. I mean, obviously, he's clearly been very, very careful about what he reveals about the royal family. And, you know, from what the extracts, I've only read the serialized extracts so far, but there's nothing at all negative, you know, about anything to do with Kate or Pippa or his parents. And I'm sure that's not realistic, is
it's
it?
not fair.
No, it's definitely not. But I think that speaks in itself to the fact that they are a very loyal,
They're
close-knit
very tight
family. And that has always come across when, from the very beginning, since we knew about Kate's existence, that's been a really consistent thread. And I think that you do feel that you get a bit of insight into those relationships and the warmth of those relationships. And so it's nice. There's a couple of cute moments that have come out so far about him introducing his now wife to his family. And she stayed overnight at his parents' house and then came down in the morning, and William and Kate were right there.
She was wearing just a shirt.
Yes, she was. Yeah.
I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
And he said she was wondерfully French in these moments and just very confident is how he described it.
Oh my God, I would have panicked.
Yeah. And the kids
had come into the room. Who is she? Is she your girlfriend? So I think that's very cute.
Yeah, it's very cute and it's relatable. And I kind of thought that what came across was the dynamic between the three siblings, which despite Kate's length of time in the spotlight, we've got very little first-hand insight into any of that. And so just him writing about living with them and them being quite protective of him, and it was sweet.
We also hear about how he prepared to give a reading at their wedding and the sort of pressure he was under. He has dyslexia. He was terrified by the sounds of it, and just talking about the preparations that went into that. But the book is essentially about his relationship with his dog. Ella is called Meet Ella, the dog who saved my life. And it's about how she was sort of a constant presence at his side through these difficult moments. And it's something that he bonded with the late Queen over, who obviously was dog crazy. So there's a lovely little nugget in there about him sitting and doing a jigsaw.
Yeah,
with the Queen, who's apparently a jigsaw fiend.
And was very good, apparently. Yeah, I mean, of course, she was brilliant at everything, wasn't she? But no, I thought the extracts of the book where he talks about his mental health struggles, I mean, it was very powerful and written in a very compelling way. And so even though, as you say, it's a book about his personal journey and his relationship with his dog, and that relationship does come across, it's also a book that I'm sure will speak to lots of people and, is an area that William and Kate have been very vocal on in their public lives as well.
Yeah.
For our listeners, actually, we have an amazing interview coming up next week. Our lovely colleague, Rosalind, interviewed James, and I actually had a sneak peek.
Okay.
Yes,
Hello.
I had a sneak peek, and it's really good.
Yes. So pick up your copy of Hello.
And I think actually, so just to add in, I think how he is perceived has been totally reframed, hasn't it, in the past few years since he decided to be open about his struggles. Because I think before that, you would have known bits about him, and he had sort of started and stopped these businesses, and I don't think the public necessarily had a particularly sympathetic impression of him. And then I think suddenly kind of
it all makes
having
sense.
The context feels completely different, and it's allowing him to really be himself and speak about something that is very important. And And
I think that's the takeaway from all of these things, isn't it? The book, Kate's video, if it reaches someone who needs it, if it resonates with someone, in Kate's case, going through cancer treatment, then that's surely a good thing. And it's something that the royals in particular are able to do. Can't really argue with that, whether or not you like the production values.
Well, it's been great having you with us, Victoria.
Thank you.
Thanks
so
for
much.
joining us. We could talk
to
to you all day.
Well, I've got no more information, sorry.
Okay, we're done.
Thank you so much. We'd love to have you back on in future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was lovely having Victoria with us today.
I love Victoria. No wonder, Emily, you want her all to yourself. Your wine and cheese nights that I'm clearly not letting go of anytime soon.
Get over it. Get over it, Emmy.
I know. I need to, but I can't.
We talk too much about royal things. You'd be very bored.
If you say
Well, that sounds like a dream. Well, that's everything from us today. Thank you so much to Victoria and to you two for joining us. We'll be back soon.
But in the meantime, catch more from Hello with our news and entertainment show, The Daily Lowdown, available on Spotify, Apple, and wherever you get your podcasts. Bye.